Nice.
Welcome back, everyone. So now we are going to go into the really in-depth analysis on how to dry age at home. Most important thing is this, which is ikejime. Once you get that fish home, I got mine in the water, but pretty much you want to clean out everything from the gills to the scales to the bloodline in the middle. What you can do is you take a knife and you go right along it just to open up the skin a little bit, and then you can take a toothbrush or a hard bristle gun cleaning kit, and all you have to do is just rub along it and make sure that you get all of that bloodline out, which will also mean that you can dry age your fish with a much higher quality at the end. So in the last video I brought up how dry aging is kind of like a controlled rot. Just like if you think about wine and beer, you're fermenting the product but in a controlled way so you get the desired outcome. It's the same thing with dry aging. Personally, I like to get all the scales off. It saves me trouble later on, and I'm not 100% certain how the skin would start contracting with scales still on it. You don't have to do the swiping motion, but what you can do is you can pat with your paper towel. In my outdoor fridge, I took a tray from a petri dish, a layer for a grill or the oven, and that's kind of like a drip pad so that any liquid can go under. As a little reminder, don't forget that the last video before this about dry aging has all information for the giveaway and on my Instagram, SB_Spears. Go ahead and check that out and join for the giveaway for Gyotaku. So pretty much here, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to show each step of my journey into doing it at home. This is something you want to do. You always want to double check your fish. This is about after 24 hours, you can see how firm the skin gets. What the fish is doing when it's in there, when it's in this dry condition with the temperature and humidity levels that are ideal, it sweats excess moisture and oils, which is where you can get a lot of that fishy smell if a fish sits in all of those oils, blood, and moisture.
Skin has become much more dry. It's changed, like, look, I can't, stomach area, it's about salmon color now. Kind of like a trout, salmon, wild trout. This thing is firming up, yeah, it's dry aging. Let me smell it. It has no smell at all. This is in.
So the most important thing I wanted to get out of this was that home fridges are not like a dedicated fridge in a restaurant. You can't exactly control all the variables as much. So I put this in a fridge that was opened normal amount throughout the day. Especially in South Florida with the temperature and the humidity percentage, what ends up happening is that the fish begins to sweat, kind of like if you take a water bottle that was in a very cold fridge and left it outdoors. The perspiration is not exactly what you're looking for. Your goal is to keep this fish not too dry, not too damp, not too cold, and not too hot. This is really difficult to do in a home fridge, but by the end of this, and maybe even in the second video, I will go over my recommendations on how to make a perfect self-sustainable setup in a home fridge without spending thousands of dollars. Now, initially, I hadn't spoken to a person who had dry aged with a gauge, but I found out that too dry is not what you want. You don't want it in 30, 40, 50% humidity. But you can still see that opening the fridge drastically changes the humidity percentage. So what you're trying to do here is check it each day, check the skin, the bloodline, if there is any blood left, which there shouldn't be any. Make sure that doesn't brown and make sure there's no pungent smell. You do this, you can catch it before it goes too far and you have wasted fish. If something goes in the wrong direction, you can react and decide what to do then. See, as soon as I open the fridge, it immediately goes up. What I want to keep it at is not unnaturally dry, but just enough that it can continue to be clean like that. So what I have here is I bought a thermostat that tracks the temperature and humidity percentage. I'll put it in the description below, and all it does is helps me adjust and gauge what I might need to change in the environment of the fish. That's all good. Let's see. Skin is nice and dry. Belly is liquor. Okay, I'm going to put this guy back before humidity goes up. Alright, so bad idea. What I was looking for online, it said about humidity between about 70 to 85% for steak. I talked to a guy who dry ages. He's at the Joint Eatery over in California. He dry ages all the time. He said I want to be in that 80 range, so I'm going to change my thermostat range between about 75 to 85 to 88% humidity. I don't want to go much higher than that, but I want to stay in that realm. I'm getting rid of all these dry packets. It's only had it there for about a day and a half to 2 days, so I want to keep it at that low temperature, and I want to minimize the humidity, at least not in the high 90s and hundreds, which Florida, very easy. Not needed. You want at least some moisture, so let me show you what it's looking like. Here's the Instagram chat with the person about dry aging. He runs a whole entire fish shop dedicated to selling dry aged fish. Go ahead and pause these at any moment you want, but pretty much she's talking about why too dry of an environment is bad for the fish right here. So as you saw in the chat messages on Instagram, if the humidity level is too low, which is what I was working with most of the time, because once you shut the fridge, it begins to decrease rather drastically. You build a crust on the outside of the fish, which traps the moisture in. And what you want is for the fish to sweat in a clean environment. So that's why you want to avoid too damp of an environment as well, because it might seem like it's a good idea to make it sweat more, but you can also be building bad bacteria if it is too humid. Throughout this whole entire process, I can tell you that the home fridge did not smell like fish. If you know what brown zini smells like, or like a decent little fish, it's not overwhelming fishy. It doesn't fill the fridge up with a fish smell. It's quite nice. I might actually eat this early today, 5 days of dry aging in the home fridge, and test that out. So for a basic home fridge, you can see how I can control the temperature perfectly fine. It stays between that 35 to 45 degree Fahrenheit range. The problem comes with the humidity and the difficulty in maintaining that, especially with the door opening and closing so often. Despite the fridge being outdoors in South Florida with about 95 to 100% humidity, what you end up with is an environment that just becomes way too dry on the inside, so you would eventually need a humidifier, not a dehumidifier. Alright guys, so it's the last day for this one. I wanted this one to sweat out some of its excess moisture, just a little bit. This one, it's only been in for 12 hours. You feel that little extra moisture on the top, you can see it. This one though, look at that. 1 week. I threw in a fresh yellow jack around the same size. Only for 12 hours though, just to sweat out some of the excess moisture. And I wanted to compare both fish side by side. You can see a drastic difference in the skin texture. You can smell a drastic difference. One kind of feels like a concentrated, kind of like dried cod almost, but not at all unpleasant. So you can already see the moisture of the one on the right side of the screen, how that's the new one. Look at the skin, look at the meat, all that excess moisture. It can be desirable, but certain fish really do improve with that broken down protein base, which breaks down any of those tendons and muscles that might make the fish a bit chewier in an unpleasant way. Kind of like if you've ever sliced a snapper, a tuna, a grouper, any of those fish right off the bat, you end up with a bit of sinew, which really minimizes how much you're enjoying the fish, which is where the saying fresh isn't always best. And that's what a lot of people around the world are finding out right now. There's so many techniques that many people around the world already knew, which is why in this next part 2 that's coming after this, I actually interview my buddy in Japan and talk to my buddy in California, and we kind of figure out, different ways that they might have done it, different ways that they've seen it in their region. And hopefully in the comments you guys can also see if you've tried this before, if your region has something like sun aging or sun drying the fish. I know Northern Europeans would do that with cod. Obviously the temperature outdoors is perfect for that. So, it'd be really interesting to start a conversation with different people from around the world in this comment section. But you can see exactly how firm that meat is. But once you get under there, look exactly how clean that is. So you can see the one on the right side of the screen, that's fresh. The one on the left side of the screen is the dry aged one. There's no bad smell on either one. Now, if you look at the fish right there, you can see that that's the dry aged one. If you keep an eye on that, I'm going to put them both side by side, the fresh one and the dry aged one. Look at how much moisture loss you've got. And the person from the joint eatery, I will probably put up a little label right here with his Instagram handle. But pretty much he was explaining to me, and in his interview I saw that he fell in love with dry aging because it meant he didn't have to rush to sell fish immediately and have to deal with ice and a smelly workplace and everything like that. That fishy smell that a lot of people associate with fish, which is why they also don't try fish, actually is not from fish itself. It's from the whole fact that the fish is decomposing, it's releasing these oils, and it's sitting in all of this juices along with other fish in this like slime, which builds up that nasty smell. The beauty of dry aging is it's also an alternative to freezing the fish that you have if you have too much. You can do this and extend the life of that fish and also change the flavor completely for 1 to 2 weeks in your fridge and then go from there. It's really an interesting technique that it's very versatile, and as you learn you can adjust what you do. Once again, this skin was amazing for chicharron, and I will say I do prefer dry aged fish skin for chicharron versus fresh. If dry aging is done properly, the limitations you have with the fish texture and quality from a fresh fish can be minimized, and you can control what you're doing, and it improves the quality of the fish by a lot. What I've noticed is the fattier the type of fish is, or the oilier the type of fish is, the better it dry ages and the better the texture and flavor improve. If it's a lean fish, kind of like this yellowjack, a matter of 12 to 36 hours or even 48 hours or even a bit more is the right amount. For 1 full week, I would do your grouper, your hogfish, your snapper, those type of things, all of those. So pretty much it cuts the same, but when you get into the whole eating aspect of it, that's when you can really see how tender it is. In the last video, I gave you a glimpse of it on top of rice onigiri, and you can just see all of the little lines going through the fish's meat, how much more tender it is compared to how it usually would be. So if you get into this, I recommend having a journal that you can write all your notes in and continue to learn from your mistakes and adjustments. I know in the next video I'm going to cover, on top of the interviews, I'm also going to cover what I believe to be the perfect setup that you can do for less than $200 or even less than that, and to set up any home fridge into the perfect dry aging fridge.